Hello, Devlin here with you, and welcome to another edition of my pirate radio show that comes to you every Thursday. Brand new episodes, and like this one. We have a great episode lined up for you, a little bit of everything coming up for you today. Roller coaster ride. And you can always expect that with me. You just never know what you're going to get. I'm going to do some heartwarming stuff. I'm going to do a little crazy stuff. You know, not crazy, but just a little obscure stuff. And then I'm going to get tough with you guys, especially the guys. Anyhow, so thanks for joining us. Grab your favorite beverage. I know it's summer, so it gets harder to listen to these because, you know, you want to be out doing stuff and that. But, hey, power to anyone who takes me out with you in one of the downloads, maybe listens to you in your car, maybe listens to you when you're sitting in the backyard just enjoying. Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you. I was thinking about mentors the other day, and I've wanted to talk about this subject for a while, but it's been a hard one to address. A couple people have called me mentors in a lot of ways, and I think we have mentors all over the place. Now, I talked about role models a couple of weeks ago, but mentors are a little different. They are role models, but they're also kind of teachers that, you know, for me, mentors are kind of people who teach you through a certain situation. So I can have a lot of older people, or even younger people. I've had younger people teach me a lot of stuff. But the truth of the matter is a mentor I see as somebody who takes you through, like, a certain, like, something you're doing. So I wanted to talk about a very special mentor. I'm surprised I have not talked about him before because he has a special place in my heart, but I've never talked about him. Maybe we'll find out, but maybe it's because it could be a little tender, and yeah, it could be that, but that's never stopped me from topics like that before, anybody who's a regular listener to me. So anyhow, the man I want to talk about today, I met when I started working at City Press. Now, I've talked about Target in the past. I've talked a little bit about Value Village, but I haven't really talked about City Press. City Press was a printing company I was with for 27 years. Yeah, pretty much fresh out of high school. My sister-in-law at the time, Cheryl, she got me the job. And it was just supposed to be a part-time summer job. And, you know, they needed people in to do these big projects and stuff like that. And it was me and a whole bunch of ladies. And, you know, I did the same thing as the ladies did, but I also helped out lifting and using pump trucks and stuff like that. Not that the ladies wouldn't do it, but a lot of the ladies wouldn't do it. So they got me to do it, you know, yeah. Kind of still a thing, you know, like, oh, look, get the guy to do it. And I'm not like a physical guy by any nature. They just kind of, you know, I was the guy who helped with boxes and stuff like that. And then after the summer came, you know, everybody basically was thanked, you know, and, you know, maybe we'll see you again next summer. And then as I was leaving, they basically came up to me and just said, why don't you stick around? You know, why don't you come in next week? And I said, okay, sure. And it's like, well, we still have some stuff we can do. And, you know, you showed that you can do other stuff. And then the next thing I know is they got me signing paperwork for getting, you know, benefits. And I'm suddenly, you know, full-time. And suddenly I'm learning machines and stuff like that. And 27 years later, people from my generation don't have jobs that long. And so that's what was absolutely amazing about this. And I never planned it. You know, when I got out of school, I just knew I really don't know what I want to be. I couldn't afford going to university or college or anything like that. And I didn't want to waste money going there if I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be. So apparently I went into printing. And It had its ups and downs. It was a little family shop. It's a lovely place called City Press. We were a little family mom and pop shop, but I met some wonderful people through there, and I'll never forget them. And, I stay in touch loosely with some of them, but, not as much as I would like. But one of the men there, who I actually didn't really get to see during a lot of the summer, was a man named Terry O'Hagan. And he was off for a couple of weeks when I started because of the fact that his wife just gave birth to his first son, and he had taken some time off. So when Terry came back, basically, Terry was like the foreman of the place. I actually didn't know who Terry was when I first started, because he showed up one day and he just ran around and always was on the run and seemed to be solving every problem in the shop. And my boss, Jim Schofield, that was his right-hand man, and so he basically said, "Oh yeah, we're going to keep Donnie on." And Terry was fine with that, because I eventually got to know him and stuff. And it was funny, because at the beginning I'm just like, who is this guy? He's just like everywhere. He's on this machine, he's on this machine, he's on this machine. I still suffer from low self-esteem, and he basically helped me through it a lot. Oh my God, we're not even 10 minutes into this show. I'm already choking up. He helped me with so many things, like not even just like machines and jobs, but he would always be there for a pep talk when I needed it. And we became really good friends. Now, Terry was a really sweet man that was like, he was a bit of a jock. He was a bit of a, I love that he had his goofy sense of humor. He was what I call a man's man, and I think that term is probably not even, I don't know if it's considered wrong to say that now, but he was very like masculine, as in, he didn't like to show emotions. He didn't like to, play his hand. He even didn't like to talk about his personal life. So every once in a while he would, and you just feel kind of honored because of the fact that it's like, wow, I got more out of Terry that time than anything. I took an instant shine to Terry, and he kind of took a shine to me. He knew I had a lot of like self-esteem issues, and he would always be my biggest cheerleader. He got me to do some incredible things. Like, I was not running big printing presses, but I worked in the bindery, which is, anybody who knows printing, that's basically where you're putting stuff together, you're packing things up. So I worked on big folding machines. I worked on like collators. I worked on a thing called the Mueller, which was, it basically put books together, and it like literally did everything. It put them together, it stitched them, it came out and cut them, and then we'd be in the back packing them. But I worked on a lot of the areas, and a lot of times I worked the machine on my own too. I also worked on the drill and the shrink wrap machine, and it was actually amazing, because for something I had no intention of doing, I went from just doing little handwork at the table, moving boxes and stuff, and it was amazing how many times I'd go. And I don't know why I don't talk about City Press. There's some wonderful things. I'm just thinking about all the people there, and I would like to talk about some of them. So anyhow, Terry and I kind of became friends, and I started getting Terry immediately, and I wasn't afraid to talk to Terry, even though I know Terry was not the kind to reciprocate or anything. But that didn't mean he wasn't interested. Like, he was a listener, and if you had a problem, his door was always open. I was always afraid to take my problems to Terry, only because I didn't want him to think I was always a whiner and stuff, but his door was always open, and he would literally, tell me to close the door and take the time I need. He'd tell me, I don't care if that job has to get out. I don't want you falling apart. And he would talk to me like a dad, like a friend, like a brother, and he was amazing. He was also a bit crazy, I think. We always said, we used to, when I first started there, we used to have one of those old coffee machines. And literally, it was one of those ones you'd find at the old hockey rinks and stuff. And he loved that coffee. We always joked that we would bury him in that coffee machine because he loved it so much. When it actually finally died and we had to get a new one, he was so disappointed because he loved it. Now, he loved working with kids and hockey as well. He got involved in coaching and lots of other aspects of hockey. His son played hockey, and he was like one of those dads that would go out and do that. And you know, I loved working with him because he not only built up my self-esteem, but he got me to do things that blow my mind. I remember we had to get some boxes, and for some reason they stored them up in the rafters. And it was a stupid place, but they stayed there forever, and then he had to go get them. Now, what he needed was a couple people up there. Now, I have vertigo. I suffer from crazy vertigo. And the truth of the matter is he never forced me to do anything I didn't want to. But this one day, he actually got me up in the rafters. Like I was standing on like two little pieces of wood that felt like they were going to break at any moment. He got me up there to help him with the boxes. And he constantly talked me through it. And I, to this day, don't know how the hell he did that. But the truth of the matter is I love that man, and I would pretty much follow him anywhere. If he told me, trust me, you're safe, I will make sure you get through this, I was right there by his side. When I say he's a little crazy, not just about drinking coffee, but the crazy part came when we used to, when I told you I worked on the Mueller where we put the books together, and I worked with many different people on there, but my favorite times was when it's me and Terry. I loved it. I was working in the back. I'd be packing the boxes, and Terry would be, filling up the loads with the pages and stuff, and I just loved it. He'd always trust me. But sometimes the cutter where they cut the book would get screwed up, and a couple times some of the belts would fall off. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to turn it on manually, and then there was these two buttons you had to click, and it would make it go just a little bit at a time, and sometimes that's how you have to do it. So your hand is literally right where the blade is. Now they do it as a safety, so you can do you have to use both hands. So you can't cut your hands, but Terry, instead of, doing a couple of extra steps to save time, because Terry was busy. Terry, all due respect to Jim Schofield for all he did there. Terry O'Hagan kept that place running. And, if he had deadlines, he'd be running around doing what he had to. And so to cut time, he would tell me to hold the buttons and push them just a little bit so they'd move a bit so he could put the belt back on. Literally with his hand just a few inches, and I don't, not millimeters even, from the blade. And I said, Terry, I can't do this. I'm going to cut your hand off. He goes, no, you're going to hit the buttons really quick. They're going to move a little bit. I go, what if I go a little further? He goes, I will be able to pull my hand out. Again, Terry could talk me into anything, and he'd look at me and he goes, look, if I trust you, you should be able to trust yourself. And literally, I would do it. And no, he never got his hand cut off. So, he trusted me and stuff. And then there came to be a point where he just started trusting me with a lot more responsibilities, and we'd still talk. And a couple times when we worked, he would tell me some stories about his life. I'd ask him questions, and he would actually answer them. And he'd have wonderful stories. And you always knew that there were more to the stories because there was kind of a twinkle in his eye. But he'd never elaborate. Like, he'd tell me about how he He had long hair like a hippie back in the late 60s, early 70s, and he'd be driving around on his motorcycle all around America. And he actually got in some trouble with some motorcycle gangs and stuff. And, he literally told me there were points in his life that sometimes, he worries that he meets up with some of these people because he caused some real trouble. But he never told me exactly the trouble. So I always thought that was like, ooh, a man of mystery. I like that. But, I met his wife a couple times, Deb. And then I got to work a couple summers. His son came in and I got to see his son grow up, Michael O'Hagan. And, he grew up and eventually, followed his dream to the police academy. And I became really close with Michael, too. And just so proud to be just a small smidgen part of that family or knowing them. Terry did some amazing stuff, too. And he would never brag about this, but he talked to me about it. His wife actually had cancer, and again, I didn't go into details because I know this was hard for Terry to talk. And Terry worked so many hours at City Press. And I remember he was drinking coffee, and as I said, we'd always make jokes because you'd swear that's what got him going some days. But one day I remember just, Terry, you look so exhausted. And he told me that after he'd work here, he would literally go to a pizza parlor and make dough for for the pizzas. And I said, Terry, you're the foreman of this company. You work here more than 8 hours a day a lot of times. You do hockey. You're always volunteering to help out with things. You have a family to look after, and you're doing a part-time job. And he said, my wife developed cancer and she has an opportunity to get the treatments done in the States without having to wait several months for the treatment. And he said, if I have to go and take a second job to do that, well, if I didn't love the man already, I certainly fell in love with him then. Because that to me was absolutely amazing. He was willing to sacrifice himself for that. And I could just go on and talk about the wonderfulness that is Terry. But what happened was, basically what transpired was when the company was about to close, Terry was, I think he was just turning 60 or 61 in that area, and I had been there 27 years, and the company was closing, and they basically said, okay, in about 8 months' time, we're going to be letting everybody go. They're going to give us full, we were down to part-time hours, but they were going to give us full hours in lieu of, like a severance. And that was actually worked out really well because it looked good on our unemployment and stuff. Terry was offered a job at a place. I won't name the place. I'm going to take the high road here, but it was another printing company. And he was offered a job there. And I thought anybody would be lucky to get Terry. Now, I was kind of, in some ways, I knew I was going to be upset leaving the people, but at the same time, I thought to myself, well, maybe now's the time. I kind of just went from a part-time job to a career, and then suddenly it was not the career I had chosen. And in the last couple of years, I was falling out of love of what I was doing, and I thought now would be a time to take a chance. The owner of the place that asked Terry basically talked to Jim and said, I could take on another person. Who do you think would be a good choice? And Jim told him Donnie. And Donnie and Terry would be the two best choices for you. And, Jim told me that he told me that, and he hoped I didn't mind. And I said, no, I'm honored that you would tell me that, and I will definitely listen to it because I had a lot of respect for the man who was offering the job. So Terry took the job because he wasn't ready to retire. And I had to really think about it because when I heard that I'd be still working with Terry, I I really that was a plus. I actually almost hoped that Terry would take over City Press and I would have stayed. Like it wouldn't be a heartbeat. I wouldn't have stayed. So what happened was I had to really think about it, but I was really determined that it was time to go. So I remember the day well. It was so hard. I basically went to Terry and I said, Terry, I've thought about the offer and I can't do it. And Terry said, no, I knew there was a chance you might not do it. And I said, if you bought City Press and asked me to stay, I would have not even hesitated. I would have said yes, because I enjoyed working with him. And that was the closest to me ever seeing him almost tear up. And this man talked to me about, his wife having cancer, but he was just such a strong person. And, I remember him coming to see me when my dad passed away, and he came and saw me and was there for me. And I remember I said, it's been 27 years. I just don't love this job anymore. And it's different because we'll be going and we'll be two workers at the same place, but I couldn't do it. And he totally understood. And we agreed that we were going to stay in touch. We'd call each other every couple of months, maybe get together. And I gave him a hug, one of the only hugs I ever gave Terry, and he gave me a great big fatherly bear hug. And then we kind of knew that things would be different. Even when we called and stuff, it would just be, in passing. But every time I called after that, he basically was just as warm, and we just started getting into the rhythm. And after about 6 months, when I called him, I got the job at Target and decided that I tried retail. And I told him it was the first job I had applied for after City Press, and pretty much got it. And he was not surprised by that. But what surprised me was this guy that hired him, who I had a lot of respect for. Terry just said, you made the right decision because this guy is a fucking nightmare to work with. And I knew it had to be true because Terry did not speak ill of too many people unless he really meant it. And he said he totally changed when he became my boss, and he wasn't even working there anymore. He hated it so much, and he kept thinking, I am so glad Donnie didn't take this and have to deal with this. And I wasn't happy to hear that because Terry got along with everyone, and I thought, good Lord, it must be bad if they couldn't get along with Terry, because Terry's such a hard worker and stuff. But one day Terry just lost it, and they basically got into it, and Terry just said, coming here was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. And the guy just said, well, you can leave anytime. It would certainly make my day. And Terry just said, okay, that's it. And then started doing just odd jobs. And surprisingly, he was back working with my old boss again, Jim, who, he would help do, work on various projects at his house and stuff, and became like semi-retired. So he told me, you did the right thing. And it was always nice to talk to him and stuff and catch up with him and find out. And he had just become a grandfather for the first time. Michael and his wife just had a baby girl. And so he was enjoying life as a grandfather. Then on January 2nd, my birthday, I get an email from my former boss's son saying, did you hear Terry died? And when I got the email, I actually thought, uh-oh, something happened to Jim, because Jim's a lot older than Terry. And when I read that Terry died, I was just floored. Terry shoveled his snow, did the snow blower, the whole works, and something just didn't feel right. And he went and had a lie down, and he died. That's what his wife told me. It was very, just Terry doing his regular life, and then went for his final sleep. Now, Terry had a couple of health issues, but he was actually not too bad shape. He was chubby, but I know chubbier people who have lasted longer. He wasn't even, I don't think he even made it to 65. And I still have moments where I want to call up Terry and I forget that he's dead. What made it even worse is I had talked to him a couple of weeks prior, and we were all planning to get together for a lunch so we could talk face to face. Now, this is why I always preach about funerals being important. This is one of the many reasons, because funerals are not about the people dying. They are for the people we leave behind. I thought this was going to be one of those, okay, he's dead and that's it. There's no real end chapter. But when I went to his funeral, I said, okay, well, this will have to be the end chapter. It was wonderful looking at his old pictures that they had playing on the television screen and seeing more stuff that I would have loved to talk to Terry about, but Terry just didn't talk about that, or it just never got around. He might have talked to me eventually. I saw Michael, and, we shared a couple of laughs about him. I saw some of my co-workers, which was nice. Then I met up with Debbie, his wife, that I only met a couple times. I barely knew her. And she took me aside and said, Terry thought about taking over that company, but we couldn't do it. He was so close to retirement age, it wouldn't have worked. And I said, no, I totally get it. And he said, and he knows that you would have stayed with him, and he kind of wanted to, one of the reasons he wanted to do that was to keep, the people that he worked with around and stuff. She told me that even though we didn't know each other that well, Debbie and I, she seemed like she knew me because Terry talked about me often. And he adored me. And there are things Terry couldn't ever say to me because it's just not the person he was. Don't get me wrong, he told me he, cared about me and stuff like that, but he wasn't a man of many words. But it meant so much for Deb to tell me that. And that was my closure with Terry. Although as long as I live, there will be no closure due to the fact that I will always cherish what he brought to my life. And I'm finally glad I'm talking about this. And it's funny because a lot of you, most of you, everybody almost will not know who Terry O'Hagan is because he's a wonderful man and the people's lives he touched, they will remember him. But I wanted other people to remember him too, only because he was such a great man and definitely one of my mentors. And when I mentor people and take them under my wing, a lot of that is because of Terry. Anyhow, I love you, Terry. I think of you often, and you're always in my thoughts and prayers. All right, I got to go wipe my tears. I'm changing the gears. I got some Nando nostalgia coming up, and I'm going to talk about a weird topic because I got to get out of this sentimental stuff. I'm actually going to talk a segment about movies I love, but I can't recommend them because they're too weird and bizarre, and people will think I'm some kind of freak when I do. So I'm going to recommend them here, and then you can do with what the information you want for. That's coming up next. And I'm back. And, there was a time I worried that, oh my God, he's crying again. I thought it was a sign of weakness and stuff. But now I think about it and I think to myself, the day that I stop crying for people I care about is the day that I can just kind of end my time here on Earth. Because I think that's when I should worry, not when I actually tear up for people I care about. Anyhow, we're back, and I've got a different kind of segment coming up for you, and I'm looking forward to doing this one because it's just weird, and I love it. I'm going to talk about 5 movies right now. I'm sure there's a lot more that I can think of, but these aren't just any movies. These are movies that I love, but I find them hard to recommend because they're not one that everyone will find what I enjoy about them. And some people might watch it and say, what kind of creep are you? And when I heard about this topic, I think I saw it somewhere. I said, I got to do this because it's so true. Sometimes you come across a movie that you love and then you think, you see a movie like Wonder Woman or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And then you just run out and say, oh, you got to go see the new Wonder Woman movie. You got to see the new Guardians movie, But then there's some movies that you watch and you love, and then you realize, well, just because I love it, that doesn't mean... And then suddenly you're just like, I don't know who to recommend this to. So, I lied. I've got a couple movies to talk about. I said 5, but I actually have 6, because I thought of another one at the last minute. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about these films, and then I'm not going to recommend them. I'm just going to tell you my feelings on them, and then you can decide if these are things you might be interested in. Now, warning, I may give some spoilers so you have an idea of what you're getting into, because I don't want you... I have a lot of people that say, oh, I like hearing what you got to say, because, sometimes I'll go and watch a movie based on your recommendations. But these are all movies that you should proceed with caution with. I'm going to start with the granddaddy of all movies. And now I've actually let people watch this, and every time I put it on, I feel I have to make a disclaimer. My first movie is Mommy Dearest. Why do I love it? I love it because it's a grand, campy movie, and I love it because it's just so damn entertaining to watch. Why is it hard to recommend? Because it's a movie about child abuse, and I find the movie humorous, and I'll look like a dick if people don't watch it with the same camp. And because it's based on a true story, that makes it all the worse. Mommy Dearest follows the story of Joan Crawford, and basically it was a famous book that came out in the 70s, I believe, where Christina Crawford, her daughter, adopted daughter, basically accused her of physical abuse, mental, physical, everything. And basically claimed it was one of the first in the tell-all books that basically, it was a groundbreaking book because it brought light to the fact that, even celebrity children could be abused and stuff, and it basically a whole bunch of books followed. It was also a groundbreaking book because it opened the light to people talking about child abuse a little more openly and honestly. Now, where the movie comes out is they finally made the movie in the early 80s, and it became a camp classic. Some people called it the worst movie ever made, or one of the worst movies ever made, but others said it was actually quite entertaining. So I remember one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who said it, so I can't give them the love, is they said that Mommy Dearest probably produced, the movie Mommy Dearest, not the book, probably produced more drag queens than it did child abuse activists. The movie also succeeds in not only camping it up and basically killing Faye Dunaway's career, because a lot of people said she did it so over the top, though a lot of people think she should have also got an Academy Award for it. The movie is hard to get through, but if you're in a certain way, you can really see the humor in it because it's just so over the top. Now, the movie does one other thing. It also really kind of worked against Christina Crawford. I was probably wouldn't be surprised if she tried to get this stopped. Because, again, here's a bit of a spoiler. At the end of the movie, when Joan Crawford dies, they literally put a scene in there where it makes it sound like Christina, who is not in the will, is going to get her revenge by writing a book to make money. So basically, the movie actually ends with, okay, was she abused? Or is she just saying this to make money? Now, in the movie, there's 2 kids she adopts. In real life, she had 4, but 2 refused to be part of it, and 2 refused to be in the movie or thing. And the 2 that weren't in the movie basically claim that Joan Crawford never did any of the stuff in that book. So, this movie has got kind of a weird feel to it. Because, some people, this was an eye-opener, and a lot of people who were child abused. And in no way do I find child abuse funny. Anybody who truly knows me knows how abuse with children is a much more personal topic than I bring up. I have sort of touched on it. So please do not think that, but there is a lot more better movies to represent this. Mommy Dearest is humorous. It's over the top. It's camp. Faye Dunaway plays Joan Crawford like some movie villain that was crazy. It's a wonderful performance. The daughter is a wonderful actress who I think went on to a couple of other things. I can't remember her name. It's like Diana Skolowog or something. I can't even pronounce it. But the performance is just thing. But again, I can't recommend this film because of the fact that people think I'm a dick. And when I have showed it to people before, I always give this thing, in no way am I saying child abuse is bad, child abuse is this. But you do have to take in mind that 2 of the kids have said that they never saw any of this thing, and they were living in the house at the time. How did they deal with it? They're just not in the movie. So, there you go. The second movie I won't spend as much time on. It was a very famous book. It's called The Hotel New Hampshire. This came out in the 80s, and it starred Jodie Foster. I think it's Beau Bridges and Rob Lowe. And Natasha Kinski, I think, was in it as well. Sorry, having a bit of a drink. It's actually a really bizarro type movie. I don't know what the book is, but the book was very popular. When they made the movie was a flop, and nobody really knew how to take the movie. I actually am one of the people who actually like this movie, and there is so much going on in this movie, I don't even know where to start. But there's so much offensiveness in this movie, and if I watched it again, it probably wouldn't be as offensive as I thought. But this movie has creepy dogs, there's a story about a girl dressed in a bear suit. But the story that's kind of weird is the Jodie Foster, Rob Lowe brother and sister relationship. Due to the fact that they are attracted to one another, or at least the Rob Lowe character can't stop thinking about his sister, Jodie Foster. Oh, there's a whole bunch of rape stuff in there too that is just horrible as well. Again, but a big problem with this movie is that, they decide their way of dealing with Rob Lowe's obsession with his sister is that Jodie Foster decides that if they sleep with each other over and over again in one day, he will get so sick of her, he'll want nothing to do with her. So yes, this movie also deals with incest, not incense. Why do I love the movie? I don't know. It's goofy. It's quirky. I loved stuff like that growing up, the early David Lynch stuff. But this stuff is just like crazy that somebody came up with so many ideas. But I also find there's a weird, bizarre honesty in this movie. And the reason I can't recommend it is because I just told you, this movie has like rape in it. This movie has incest in it. This movie has weird fetish stuff that isn't fetish, but it's not handled in a way that it's dark. It's filmed very bright and light, and this happens everywhere, kind of attitude. So that is The Hotel, New Hampshire. My next film is Crash. This is the David Cronenberg version, and not the one that won the Oscar that robbed Brokeback Mountain. I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to get emotional. Crash, this is the David Cronenberg, one of Canada's great filmmakers. And when he released this, it got kind of mixed reviews. Some people loved the artistry of it. Other people thought it was just fucked up as all get. Why do I love it? I love it because it deals with fetishes, and I've talked about this in the past. I am very intrigued by people's fetishes and what turns them on. Why can't I recommend this movie to people? Because these people's fetishes are they get turned on by people's car crashes. They not only risk lives in cars to have sex, but they also just get turned on when they see a car crash at the thing of the road. And we're talking car crashes that could cause death or brutal things, or a whole bunch of people getting turned on when they're recreating, Jane Mansfield's beheading in a car accident. This movie did not do very well, but David Cronenberg, I remember going to see this with Corda in the theater, and we just looked at each other, and I just said, I think I really like that movie. And she said, I think I did too. And I also remember seeing Siskel and Ebert talking about it, and Ebert said that if you were turned on by this movie in any way, you should go immediately to a psychiatrist. I actually found this movie to be a turn-on. There were lots of scenes that turned me off, but I was surprised how turned on I was. Apparently this movie was huge in Germany. I don't think that surprises anyone, but definitely not a movie I can just sit around and pay tribute to and tell people, go check this out. It's light family entertainment. Number 4 on my list is Boxing Helena. Now, there's no real order to these. These are just the thing. Boxing Helena was a flop movie in the 90s. It was, I want to say, I am going to be totally wrong. I went to see it because I was big on Twin Peaks, and I saw everything Sherilyn Fenn was in around that time, and she came up with this movie, Boxing Helena. I want to say this was directed by Sofia Coppola, but I get the feeling I could be wrong. Anyhow, this movie, why do I love it? Well, I loved everything Sherilyn Fenn here, and I also like bizarre love stories. Why can't I recommend it to people? Because it's the story of a man who fears that his girlfriend is going to leave him. And after she has a little accident, he starts deciding that if he cuts off all her limbs and puts her in a box, then she will learn to love him because he will have to take care of her. I don't want to give any main spoilers in there because there is some plot twists in this, but just right there probably tells you why I can't recommend this to people, because I got a kick out of it just because it's the most ridiculous idea for a story. And the way it's handled is kind of... I should be more disturbed. Let's just say I should have been more disturbed watching this, but I just remembered thinking, wow, that's one way to get someone to like you. And thinking how astronomically crazy that is. And I think that's what they were going for. They don't play it up with a lot of camp, but they do play it up with weirdness. But there is a saving grace with one of the plot twists in it. And that's all I'll say. If you feel the need to search out any of these movies. But hey, you binge watch everything else. Why don't you take a shot on this list? 2 more to go. Tusk. This is a Kevin Smith film that actually was just a couple years ago. And I didn't know what to expect, but I heard some weird things about it, so I watched it one day. Now, I did actually recommend it to a woman, and I'll give you her response in a minute. Why do I love this movie? I wouldn't say love. This is kind of almost like a boxing Helena. I like the movie a lot. Why? Because it's actually very engrossing at the beginning. Then the weird stuff happens, and then it gets crazy. They add a character which I absolutely hated. So my love went to like, but the beginning is so damn engrossing that I just fell in love with it. Why can't I recommend this movie? Because it's basically, and this is a big spoiler, it's basically about a man who goes to interview a man, and that's the charming part. But then we find out that the man is obsessed with walruses, and he decides he's going to capture this man and turn him into a human walrus. I'm leaving a little break there so you can catch your breath. I will say that again. He is going to turn him into a human walrus, hence the name Tusk. Now, Kevin Smith did this totally tongue-in-cheek, and it plays like that, but there are some moments that are just really disturbing, and I will not be able to take out of my brain for, well, probably for the rest of my life. A woman I know who likes horror movies, I kind of mentioned Tusk to her, and I said, I'm not recommending to you, but I'm going to challenge you to it. And she couldn't wait. She went and watched it the next night, and she said, I know exactly what you meant. I don't know if I can recommend that to people, but I'm not upset that I saw it. It's just a fucked up movie. And what can I say about it? The movie that inspired this list is the next one, because I've heard lots of things about this movie, but until I saw it with my own eyes, I could not believe it. And this movie is Antichrist, starring Willem Dafoe, and a wonderful, I can't even think of, it's a foreign film, but William Dafoe is in it. Anyhow, it was an actress that didn't go on mainstream stuff anymore. And I've always heard about this movie being very hard to get through and stuff. It's an art house film, it's an experimental film, and it's a foreign film. Why do I love it? Again, I couldn't take my eyes off this film. It's a beautifully filmed movie. Like the opening sequence is probably one of the most disturbingly beautiful things I have ever seen filmed in a movie. Why can't I recommend it to people? Again, there might be some spoilers in this, quite a lot of them, but you might want me to. I was explaining it to Corda, and she says, you know what? I don't think I ever want to see this film, but I am engrossed in how you're explaining it. And basically, okay, I'm going to give it to you all if you don't want to hear what happens thing. Basically, it's about a couple that loses a child while they're having sex. The child falls out of a window, and they blame themselves. Now, I'm not going to give you I'm going to give you a couple of major plot twists, but there are some other twists in this movie. I'll stay away from that. Why can't I recommend it to people? Because the husband, who's a psychiatrist, decides he doesn't like how the wife's psychiatrist is handling it. So he takes her out to the woods in order to deal with it. And when they deal with it, they have really aggressive sex. They go through all the stages, which are used as chapters in the movie with, like depression, grief, stuff like that. And then eventually ends, and I won't tell you why or how, but with both of them getting their genitals mutilated. Again, I'm leaving a break so you can... Did I just hear what he just said? Yeah, I won't tell you how they get to that point or how it happens, who does it. All I can tell you is I saw stuff in this movie that were some of the most disturbing images I've ever seen in my life. And, but overall, I'm glad I saw it because it's supposed to be a legendary film. I think at Cannes, I think the actress won a Best Actress win. She won the award. And I think they gave the director, who again, his name's failing me, an anti-award saying, what a beautiful shot film of a subject that nobody needs to deal with or watch on a movie screen. my life wouldn't have changed either way if I saw this or I didn't see this, but I'm kind of glad I did. But again, I can't just recommend it to people. It's just an absolute asinine film that has some beautifully moments, and I was engrossed by it every step of the way. And all the bad stuff really happens in Act 3, but get yourself a seatbelt. Get yourself a seatbelt when you watch that Act 3, because if you're going to put up with any of these movies, be prepared. So there you have it. 6 movies that I love or like a lot, but cannot recommend to just anyone. But it would be fun thinking about being around, the work lunch table saying, hey, you know what movie you should check out? Antichrist. If you like a good genitalia mutilating movie, this is your deal. And the camera never pulls away. That's all I'll say. All right, we're done with those movies. Maybe go check out something light and fluffy this weekend. But if you dare, those are available probably on streaming and Netflix and various other places. When we come back, I'm going to speak to the guys, although the girls can learn from this too, but you'll know what I'm talking about when we come back after this break. We're back and into the final segment. And a couple of weeks ago, I did a thing on hotels. And if you're a regular listener, you know what I'm talking about. And I mentioned in that something happens that I was going to dedicate a whole section to. And it's only a small story about the hotel, but it's something I wanted to say. It was when I was at the pool in Niagara Falls, when I had the pool all to myself from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8. Well, I didn't have the whole pool to myself. I had it for the first half hour, and it was wonderful. It was great. The second half hour, I was joined by a man and woman who, well, let's just say, I don't think they had been dating long. In fact, I think they had just met that night before. And basically, everybody was hungover. And from what I get, the woman did talk to me a little bit. Everybody was hungover and still sleeping, but her and this guy decided they were going to strip down and go in the pool. Now, there was nothing wrong with this woman. She was, nice and stuff. She did strip down to her bra and panties because she didn't have a bikini, and she tried to make a big deal like, oh, I hope you don't mind, I'm in my bra and bikini. And I said, hey, do whatever you got to do. And then, the guy stripped down to his underwear, and, he was pretty cute. He was okay, nothing bad. He seemed, I don't know what nationality he was, but he was good looking. And when they were in the pool, I was just kind of relaxing and stuff. And she decided she wanted to teach him how to swim. And basically he went along with it because he didn't know how to swim, but it was obvious that she was like blatantly flirting with him, touching him, doing all this stuff, and he was going along with anything because he wanted to get laid. Now, just from the conversations they had, I get the feeling they fairly knew each other but haven't slept together yet. But you could tell it was definitely in the cards because I'm not stupid. I can see flirting. Even with my glasses off in the pool, I can see and hear flirting. Well, she had a voice that carried. I don't know what nationality she was. She was just very loud and obnoxious and saying, come on, you can do this. So she started off kind of like sweet and sexy a little. Here's a woman that's going to teach her man how to thing, and then her voice just became like almost like Fran Drescher, like, you're doing it wrong. I can't believe you're doing it wrong. You got to keep your butt up more. You got to, like, and so my quiet half hour became this Fran Drescher drill sergeant, and it was so obvious that the guy really was only doing this because he knew he was going to get into bed. And she basically let him know that they were eventually going to go to bed, because just the way, okay, hold on, I'm going to touch you. I'm going to put my hands here and here and here to show you where your ass should be. And you know, like if I wasn't there, they may have been having sex. But as it went on, she started emasculating him. Like, I can't believe you can't do it. This is the easiest thing ever. This is like, and like just ripping into him. And he was a good sport and trying desperately to swim, like she said. And then she'd be like, you know, I used to teach kids how to do this, and you can't even do it. And just ripping into him. And this poor guy was putting up with it because he knew he was going to get laid. I was aghast. Now, I am not unfamiliar to the ways of men will do anything basically to get laid. But there's got to be a point. I kept thinking to myself, dude, we're in a casino full of lots of single women. No offense, the woman was perfectly fine, but he could do so much better. Because I kept thinking to him, do guys only think with their dicks? The fact that if this is what she's like, teaching him how to swim, what she would sound like if they were in bed. Now, I know some guys are into that whole humiliation thing, and maybe he was, but I'm just picturing in bed, like, your ass isn't high enough. You gotta put it in more. You gotta fuck me harder. Sorry, I apologize for getting a little... But I'm thinking to myself, just her voice alone would turn me off. But this poor guy is like, really? You are not hot, but you are attractive enough to find somebody who's going to treat you a little nicer than this. You know, this wasn't any hot supermodel telling him. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that just because if she was a hot supermodel, she could get away with that, because I would still be appalled at this. But, like, it was like, you're being treated like absolute dirt to get laid, where you could do better just walking out in the thing and probably meeting somebody within 20 minutes. And when I'm talking just to the guys, in no way am I saying this. No woman should be berated like that either. It's just I'm speaking for the guys on this point because I'm sick of watching guys being emasculated and put down for this. But no woman should be in that position too. So by all means, don't think that this is a one-way street. I don't like seeing it happen to women. But we tend to, what happens now is it doesn't happen as much to women. But it seems to be okay for it to happen to men. I have seen a lot of married couples or boyfriends and girlfriends where they just emasculate each other all the time. You know, make sure you do your honeydew list and stuff like that, like talking to them like fucking child. And the reason they listen to this is because they get a little bit of, like, piece of ass at the end of it. Oh, come on. Give yourselves more credit, men. Come on. If it's not okay to do that to a woman, then it shouldn't be okay to do that to a guy. And when I can almost not listen to AM radio because of the fact that multiple commercials in that are basically just emasculating men. Like, oh, we're making fun of men again. They never do anything right. They don't look at maps and stuff. We always get in trouble for stereotyping women and putting them in stereotypical situations, but apparently we can still make fun of men. I am saying it's not okay. And if you're a man who's constantly berated, I had a husband, beautiful family man, takes care of his family wonderfully, works extra hard to get money, and he actually told me that he sometimes can't stand how much his wife berates him and emasculates him. And here is this beautiful, wonderful man using the word emasculates to describe his wife. And it saddened me because it's like, you know, I understand some people's dynamic is to be playful. where it's like making fun of the person a little bit, and I'm okay with that. If they're okay with that, that's fine. But then I notice sometimes the tables turn and the man will do it, and sometimes suddenly the woman is just bent out of shape. Man, come on, I want to have a little bit more respect to the men's race. Is it really that hard to get laid that you're willing to put up with this kind of stuff? And I don't want to keep putting it on the emphasis of being laid, but come on, I know how men think. They're not doing it to save their marriages. They're doing it for the chance that they might get a fucking Hummer at the end of the week. And I'm sorry, I'm just totally thinking. I absolutely love Mike. I couldn't even imagine emasculating him. I'm not even a fan of play fighting. I sometimes see people on the bus, sometimes even people I know, where the guy will say a comment, like a dirty joke, and the woman will playfully hit him and smack him. And I understand this is a dynamic and people sometimes enjoy that, but you know what? I'm not even a fan of this, because if kids see you doing that, and then if a guy play hit back to a wife and somebody saw it, they would totally take that out of context. And that is where I have an issue. And that's why I think it shouldn't be happening at all. Sure, give a nudge, give a little thing. But I actually literally see women smack men or punch them because they think that's okay. And it is playful, but there has to be some aggravation issues behind it. Because you can be playful, doing lots of other things. But you picked something aggressive that, in return, if the man did it, he'd get a whole hell of trouble if somebody caught him doing it. Or if the guy did it when the girl wasn't in a playful mood, that could be misconstrued. But no man is going to go and, oh, she's hitting me all the time. Because why? Because society wouldn't take that seriously. I don't want to make a big issue about this, but I'm not a big fan of this. That guy was in the pool, and she treated him like shit. At one point, she even looked at me and said, so do you think he's a lost cause? Do you think I should just give up on him? And I looked her right in the eyes, and I said, I don't think he is. I think he's worth something. That's all I said. And yet, as I got my clothes together and walked away from the pool, she was still that whiny voice just in, I can't believe you can't do it. Kids can do this. And he puts up with it just because he might get a roll in the hay. We gotta stop this, guys. Come on. I love sex just like anybody else, but honestly, are you gonna put up with shit like that just for it? Come on, you probably have a better night just going up masturbating and then calling some friends up and going out for a night on the town. And if not, find a woman that's going to treat you with some respect, like the respect you give them. And again, I'm talking to the men, because I think women are stronger to walk away from a situation more than that. Now, there are some women that would stick through an abusive relationship like that. And that's exactly what this is. I don't care if they had just met. This is the beginning of an abusive relationship. Now, there was a time when I would have just put my hands up and said, well, obviously they like this, it works for them. But now I just want to, you don't know how much I wanted to say, get the hell out of this pool. Go find someone else. Somebody will treat you good. And although I'm talking just to the men, if a woman's in this situation, I'd want to tell her the same thing. She deserves the right to be this. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this. It's just sometimes I just get so pissed off with my fellow men that I just need to talk to them. I want to give them a good shake. It's not like I could emasculate them, but I don't choose to do that because that would be not taking the high road. And obviously they seem to enjoy it and stuff. But anyhow, short segment there, but short but sweet. Men, knock it off. Don't be treated like doormats. Don't be treated like thing. And I'm talking to guys who even are getting that happening with their wives. You know, I went to a wedding this last week. My brother got married, Paul, to his girlfriend, Marilyn, and they're now man and wife. And I don't like weddings. You all know that. I didn't mind this wedding because the emceeing was top notch. I've been to weddings where the MC just makes every other song is making jokes about how his life is over and now his life is hers, and how, you know, he has to obey her but she doesn't have to obey him, and ball and chain, the whole works. Guess what? I fucking hate that. That's one of the top things on my wedding list of why I fucking can't stand weddings. One of the reasons I like this wedding is because the MC was smart enough to do it. Another reason I like this wedding is I was the damn MC, and I know what I don't want to hear. And I had a lot of people come up to me and say they really liked how I MC'd. A lot of people try too hard to make jokes, but I didn't. I saved some jokes for my speech for my brother, and everything else was improvised when I needed it. I didn't feel the need to say that his life was ending, her life was ending. It was all about a beginning. And people came up to me and said, I think you did a great job. I go to a lot of weddings, and they just try so hard to be funny, and you just basically threw it in whenever you felt you needed to do it. You didn't feel you had to be like this comic every 5 minutes and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? I've been to some weddings, and I can't stand when that happens. And then, you know, thing. Now, albeit a lot of people had drink in them when they came up and apologized. It told me I did a great job, but I don't care. I'm still taking it for face value. Yeah, it's just something that pees me off. Now, they did have a wedding cake with the bride, and on the top, the groom was sitting down because he had a ball and chain. That's okay. They picked out the cake, so obviously they knew that. And it's one joke. It's one joke that obviously they decided on. But if they like told me, oh, could you make little jokes about being ball on the chain, or this is the end of Paul's life, I would have told them flat out, no. If you want that, go find some zany Henny Youngman kind of guy. I don't do that kind of, you know. I try not to do that humor. Because I don't believe in it, and I think it's horrible. If we live in a world where we should respect women, we should respect our wives and our girlfriends, I think we deserve that for men too. All right, down off my soapbox. Hopefully it's sunny where you are. I'm wrapping things up, so get ready to go out and find an adventure. Go out and enjoy whatever weather's happening right now. Thank you for taking the time to deal with this. I will be back next week with a brand new show, and I look forward to talking to you all very, very soon.